You guys, we're going to get started in about 1 minute. All right. All right, you guys, it is 11 o'clock, and I want to make sure that we start on time. And I just want to say welcome and good morning. And thank you all for joining our first of two webinar series. So the purpose is just to have a conversation about mental health in the Black community. But today we're going to be focused on mental health and the Black church. So my name is Taquina Davis, and I'm the managing partner with Healthy Strategies. And I will be your moderator today, and we're also the organization that's hosting this webinar. So again, I stated we're going to be hosting and opening the conversation about mental health and the Black church. So before we dive into everything, I just want to give everybody a little bit of overview in reference to mental health and the Black community. So we all know that historical adversities, which include slavery, sharecropping, race-based exclusion from health, educational, and social economic resources, translate into socioeconomic disparities experienced by Black and African American people today. So socioeconomic status, in turn, is linked to mental health. So people who are impoverished, homeless, incarcerated, or even have substance abuse problems, they're at a higher risk for poor mental health. So while the experience of being Black in America varies tremendously, there are shared cultural factors that play a role in helping define mental health and supporting well-being, resiliency, and healing. So according to the Health and Human Services Office of Minority Health, Black adults in the US are more likely than white adults to report persistent symptoms of emotional distress, such as sadness, hopelessness, and feeling like everything is an effort. Black adults living below poverty line are more than twice as likely to report serious psychological distress than those that are more financially secure. Despite progress made over the years, racism continues to have an impact on mental health of Black and African American people. Negative stereotypes and attitudes of rejections have decreased, but continue to occur with measurable adverse consequences. Historical and modern instances of negative treatment have led to a mistrust of authorities, many of whom are not seen as having the best interests of Black and African Americans in mind. Now, faith and spirituality can help in the recovery process and be an important part of a treatment plan. So, for example, spiritual leaders and faith communities can provide support and reduce isolation. So today we want to tap into the faith-based arena and the perspective of this issue. So today we have an array of experts who will help shed some light on this topic and provide us with different perspectives. So I'm so excited to be having this conversation with a great group of community and church leaders who these three people I love so dearly. So today we have Dr. Mary Jones, we have Mr. Chavez Smith, and then we also have Dr. Willie Thompson. So they're going to help provide some insight into this discussion. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to ask our panelists to introduce themselves, give a little bit about your background when it comes to mental health and also the organization that you work for. So Dr. Mary Jones, we're going to start with you. Did she freeze? She did freeze. All right, we're going to jump to you, Mr. Smith.
Okay, well, great morning. First of all, great morning. As Dr. Davis stated, that my name is Chavez Smith. I am currently a youth pastor here in Columbia, South Carolina, with Brooklyn Baptist Northeast, our Northeast campus. as well as I have my own life coaching practice where I focus on mindset, personal development, spiritual development. And within that, I operate within the community, going to several schools, talking to teens, as well as some of their sports teams as well. And I am an advocate for making sure that young people, they really tap into mental health and exercising their voice, for lack of better terms, making sure that they have a voice and they understand that they have a voice because that is important in the community today.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Dr. Willie Thompson.
So, hello and good morning to all of our friends and colleagues. Again, I am Dr. Willie Thompson. I have the pleasure and honor of serving as the senior pastor of the Oak Grove Baptist Church in Columbia, South Carolina. Also, well, we call it Pontiac, South Carolina. Um, I have also have served as a professor of social sciences at Allen University, as well as on the staff at Howard University and University of San Diego. I currently, in addition to serving as senior pastor, serve as a project director for Recover All South Carolina, which is a faith-based recovery community organization where we hold or host satellites in 5 different cities around our state and are expanding to 3 or 4 additional counties across this beautiful Palmetto state of South Carolina. So I'm looking forward to this wonderful conversation and looking forward to sharing with this great panel.
So thank you, Dr. Thompson. Okay, Dr. Jones, we got you back. So glad to have you back. So we're still in introductions. If you could just give us a brief introduction, that'll be awesome.
Yes, so good morning again. My apologies. So I am a research assistant professor, have served as a research assistant professor at the University of South Carolina. I currently am still adjunct faculty and work as the director of workforce development and helping to prepare public health professionals through education and training. And I also have served for a little over 10 years as a health educator at Prisma Health. And so a lot of my research has focused on just chronic disease prevention and also minority health.
Awesome. As you guys can see, we have a wealth of knowledge. And so I'm excited to be having this conversation in reference to mental health and the Black community, and also specifically the Black church. So we're going to dive right into a specific population. So we're going to dive right into the Black youth. So, and this is going to be a question for you, Mr. Smith. So, Black youth are facing more mental health concerns than ever. Being young can be hard enough as it is. They're dealing with their grades, dealing with hormones, and life choices can impact the mental health of any child. So as a youth pastor, what are you experiencing and seeing with the youth that you encounter, and how are you diving into, and even, or are you addressing mental health?
That's a great question, Dr. Davis. Honestly, what I've been seeing over the past, 5 years, honestly, what I've seen is that within our community, right, the African American community, young people are less likely to discuss what's going on in their lives as it pertains to mental health. And the biggest thing that I've seen is that sometimes they don't feel like they have a voice. And in that, it has changed the entire trajectory on how I address the young people at the church within our services. I have shifted the entire service to give them a platform to where they have a voice. And then in turn, I utilize scripture to help them with their issues. So we don't have a traditional type youth teen service, right? It's more of a youth roundtable discussion to where the young people can sit and just share what's going on, and also allow the other young people to help them. Maybe someone else is having the same issue. Last month, September being Suicide Prevention Awareness Month, we held a panel, and we brought in some specialists, and it really broke me down to see that young people in this community in Northeast Columbia, where we typically say it's the suburbs, and you don't feel like the kids are going through what other kids may be going through, and they really are. They really are going through some of the same issues that we may say some other children within the state or within the city may be going through. And as the youth pastor and as, one of their mentors in the community, it was very eye-opening to see that the kids were hurting, but they also understood that they had a platform to where they could just openly share some of their concerns and the things that was going on in their lives and in their minds.
So, and it's interesting how you said you had this shift and go away from traditional
Yeah.
services, and that you had to adapt. So just one little follow-up question for you, Mr. Smith. So what can parents do, or what should parents be aware of? I mean, I know I'm a mother of 2, and I know Mary, she's a mother of 3. So like, we as parents who have young kids who are dealing with certain issues and may not be around, a mentor like yourself, what can parents like us look for, and what can we be aware of?
It's interesting that you say that. Really, parents, we have to pay attention to the signs. Studies show that 95% of young people are on social media. And typically their heads are like this all day, right? Their heads are down. So we kind of miss some of the signs, we miss some of the triggers. But as parents, we have to ask those tough questions. We know our children. I have 5, right? And each one of them has different personality. And when that personality shifts, oftentimes parents, I've noticed, I'm just saying what I've noticed over here in our community, parents don't ask those tough questions. Is everything okay? How was your day? We have gone away from asking how our young people's days going, because we see them with their heads down and they're on their phones. So it appears that everything is okay, when in fact that sometimes they're on their phones looking for answers. So as parents, and this is what I tell a lot of our parents at the church, is to just pay attention. Ask your children those questions. Have them put the phones down. Our daughters have cell phone time. They know when the phones go off, the phones are off. So that's when we open up those conversations and have that dialogue with our young people. And that is one of the biggest things that I've noticed, that if we just start talking to our teens and talking to our young people, they'll start opening up and sharing, because now they feel like they're being heard, as opposed to just you passing them over, if that makes sense.
That makes a lot of sense, and I appreciate you making the statement in reference to just asking them if they're okay. And like, even if somebody comes to me and says, "Hey, are you okay?" I'm like, "Oh goodness, am I okay?" And then sometimes as parents, we get so mundane in the day-to-day that we sometimes just look at them as our children, versus children with feelings, emotions, dealing with stuff at school. So I appreciate you bringing up that nice tip in reference to just saying, just sit back and just say, "Are you okay?" Right? Because as they develop and as they get older, we're able to have those conversations. And so, Dr. Jones, we're going to still talk a little bit about the Black teens. And so we know that Black teens with mental health conditions are less likely to seek treatment, though they're more likely to experience higher rates of depressive moods. So from a public health perspective, and as a researcher, what are you seeing, and what is the research saying as a contributing factor to this issue?
Sure. So one of the primary a category of things that's happening is adverse childhood experiences. That includes, violence, abuse, neglect, racism, discrimination, even online as they're on social media. Contributing factors such as poor mental health of household family members, substance abuse in the household, instability in their families due to incarceration, displacement, parental separation, and then, social economic status, for sure. And so a lot of times children that are experiencing adverse childhood experiences, the household that they're living in can be very unstable. And there's not as much of a promotion of mental health support based on those who are their caregivers. you know, there are some things that children are not going to do or cannot do themselves, teenagers, youth, unless there is someone who is pushing for them to do it, or unless they're being made to do it. And they might not like it if their parent enrolls them in counseling, but you have a group of those in need who do not have the support at home to where someone is going to pay attention, like, you know, Pastor Smith said, and get them the help that they need and have that dialogue. So it's not happening at home. They're embarrassed to talk about these things at school with the guidance counselors. They don't want the stigma associated with, oh, you know, Mary's going to the guidance counselor today, something must be wrong with her. They don't want to talk about those things at school, because then they feel like, and it has proven to be true as well, that will open up a new realm of bullying for them. So it's very hard when they are facing mental health challenges. It is very hard for them to have supportive environments to be able to access in a non-threatening way that doesn't have a negative stigma attached to it, which is why, you know, the purpose of why we're here today, you know, the Black church, you know, as Pastor Smith said, the youth roundtables, but the church is and traditionally has been a safe haven historically. That is where folks went to for healing from sickness, emotionally, physically, mentally, and it provides an environment that is more inclined to provide a supportive place to share if the tone is set for that at church. And so, you know, with the research and these adverse childhood experiences is very common. Most children have experienced at least one adverse child experience by the time that they are a teenager. And just depending on the areas that they're living in, they could have experienced 2 to 3 by the time they are 13 years old. And so we have to understand and just go into looking at our youth in a manner of, let's go ahead and assume that they have experienced an adverse childhood experience. There is something that everyone is dealing with, and children aren't any different. Youth, teenagers, they are not any different, especially when they have the world at their fingertips. It could be something as simple as them on YouTube or them scrolling through TikTok or Instagram, and they are seeing what is happening in other countries with the wars and the bombings and all these attacks. And they could, on their screen, see a child that has just had their head blown off, just that simple. And they may not want to tell anybody that they saw that at home or their teacher, because it is a form of trauma, and they may get in trouble. It's like, okay, well, maybe I was on my phone when I wasn't supposed to be, so now I don't even want to talk about what I saw. And so we have to be mindful that they are being exposed to traumatic events, even if they are not physically in that location. It's just all over the internet, and that will impact children. And so having the dialogue and creating spaces where the dialogue can happen is very helpful. And so, you know, we definitely have a responsibility as the Black church. My mother's on here today, but my father, he's deceased, but he was a pastor. So I grew up in the Black church and have been engaged in the physical and mental health committees, the health and wellness ministries at every church that I have served in. And so it is definitely an issue that has to be connected to the overall health of the congregation, touching on the mental health aspects.
Awesome. Dr. Jones, you covered a lot. I know that was a very broad question, and you did such a fine job in reference to answering it. And there's so many different layers to all of what we're talking about. You talked about exposure. That's one barrier. You talked about dialogue, and also talked about support and how important the Black church is when it comes to support. And then you also talked a little bit about the substance abuse. And so I know Dr. Thompson And we're going to jump right into you because this leads right into the work that he's currently doing. So I know your church has a unique program that addresses mental health, addiction, and recovery. So can you share with us about the inception and implementation and also some of the successes of your program?
Well, again, good morning. And it's great to be here. Dr. Jones, I so much agree with you, as well as you, Brother Smith. So I actually got into the mental health space by accident because I really didn't think I needed this mental health work, or I thought I was okay. You know, I was licensed, ordained, I'm a minister of the gospel. I can always pray, I can call on Jesus, I can walk away, I can take a few steps and breathe. You know, I can go shopping, for, retail therapy. I kind of thought everything was okay until I was approached by a colleague actually at the university where I served as faculty about the opportunity to develop a collegiate recovery community for African American students at the university. So I was like, kind of like not too aware, not paying much attention, not being aware of my own trauma, maybe not being aware of my own prejudices or my own biases according or my own biases surrounding addressing addiction, addressing mental health, addressing drug use. So I ended up, applying for this opportunity for the university to develop the Collegiate Recovery Center. And we ended up launching and establishing the very first Collegiate Recovery Center on a HBCU campus in South Carolina entitled AU Rise. And it was Allen University Restored Inspired Student Excellence. It was a program where we would launch or have students opportunities to come and learn more about substance abuse, learn more about misuse, learn more about treatment, learn more about opportunities and resources that were available in the community. And how they could become peer-to-peer supporting. And when we were speaking with Dr. Jones, she was talking a little bit about, well, not necessarily. The statement was that Black teens are less likely to get treatment. And that's some true, but it's not. They just get treatment in a different way. They use their own social support services to treat their concerns. They use their own peer groups. They talk to each other, right? They hang out with each other. They go places with each other. And that's kind of their treatment model. Which is kind of different from the normal medical model that we were prescribed to say, hey, you got to go to a center, got to go see a professional, got to go see this. Now, we want them to see professionals and train professionals, but a lot of young people are being treated by each other, which we know could be beneficial, but could also be dangerous. And what we found is that as the university's center was experiencing explosive growth, explosive platform, explosive influence on the campus, it stirred our hearts and our minds towards the more work that we could be doing as a church to address mental health in our communities. And with our congregations. So we ended up working with the state to establish a community recovery organization, or an RCO, that is been funded by various partners, including South Carolina Department of Alcohol and other substance abuse. We began doing that work, and then we saw more explosive growth around the church's role in addressing addiction, mental health, wellness, well-being across the state among congregations that look like us. And from that point, I guess for the past 18 months, we've just been continuing to do that work and share stories, allowing people to be transparent, using a 12-step model, and also the Celebrate Recovery model, Smart Recovery model, and of course, the Certified Peer Support Specialist program to help empower churches and communities and pastors and leaders to go and offer support services and groups to people who may be affected by and also addressing alcohol and substance abuse, mental health and wellness, psychological health, emotional health, social well-being concerns. That has kind of been some of the thing that we have been doing, and that's how we have entered into this mental health space. But I must admit it was not easy, because most people who probably look like me and do the work that I do not necessarily think that we need the mental health resources, that we need psychological health, and we need emotional health because, all to Jesus I surrender, all to him I freely give, right? We kind of take all our burdens to the Lord and we leave them there in theory, but we take them back everywhere we go in practice. And so it is just unique to see the way that our church and community has kind of evolved in education, development of support groups, development of our pastoral leaders. Like, we actually have staff members now who are trained, certified peer support specialists who can actually offer resources to peers as well as to families. And We've developed new community partnerships like with Healthy Strategies and other organizations, SAMHSA, DeOtis, the Courage Center, Favor Low Country, Favor Upstate, USC. We've had an opportunity to develop these partnerships and then even engage at levels of advocacy and policy engagement around the governor's office and, of course, the state of South Carolina. So it has been a tremendous journey. And it is definitely something that we didn't even expect. Because again, starting with me as the pastor, I really didn't think it was this intense with this. It was this serious, even though I myself had a shrink or a psychologist during my theological study days, right? Which ultimately changed my life. So I'll tell anybody any day of the week, get you a counselor, go lay on somebody's couch, go talk to somebody every week if you can, find some help, so it helped me. It changed my life to actually have a counselor. And I'm very open about going to see my counselor, even though, he's in DC and I'm in South Carolina. I don't mind taking a flight, to go. I'll trade some Louis Vuittons and some Gucci to go take a flight to go see it on my counselor's couch, to get the help that I need, because, mental health and well-being is a necessity. And I think as church leaders become more transparent about these concerns, I think we'll see a lot more transparency and openness in our congregations so that people can really begin to address some of these issues that they have somehow pushed under the rug. Yeah. Dr. Davis, I know that was a lot, but I was trying to get it
but
in.
it's very meaningful and very good. And let me just say this, you guys, I've seen Dr. Thompson's and his crew's program firsthand, and I was in awe in reference to the fact like a Black church that's actually having a conversation, working with a national organization, receive funding to address this issue, and they have been extremely successful. And that's why I've partnered with him and his team to assist, because you don't see too many Black churches that are actually in the forefront, not in the background, or not on the side, but in the forefront, leading this work. So kudos to Dr. Thompson and his team and the work that he's doing, because it is phenomenal. And I tell him every day, I'm like, you know what? You guys have an awesome model when it pertains to how other churches can get into this. So I wanted to tap into Dr. Thompson, you and Pastor Smith. I did have a question for you guys. So as a church leader and an influencer with your church, giving sermons, what conversations are you guys having with other church leaders and members within your congregation regarding mental health? So what does your doctrine or your belief say about mental health? And this is for you, Dr. Thompson and Pastor Smith.
Yeah, so thank you. And Brother Smith, if I could share, I have a wealth of colleagues from Howard Divinity, from UC San Francisco, from UC San Diego, from all over the nation, from Dr. Jonathan Butler at the Nurture Center in San Francisco to Dr. Ronald Hobson, all the way at Howard University School of Divinity. These are pastoral leaders and great men of God who have been very supportive and created communities for me to be transparent about my own mental health and wellness, also to connect to mental health professionals, as well as to have my own sort of mental health support group. I've first been talking to pastors about doing their own mental health work and addressing some of those traumas, addressing some of those concerns, and addressing some of those barriers and stigmas that they have against addressing the white elephants. some of the concerns. And it's really personal. Like we had drug addiction impacting our family, right? I saw it firsthand as a child and thought that it would never affect me. Thought that I grew up, I became an adult. Oh, I'm good. But not only are you impacted as the person who is um, abusing the substance, but also the person who's supporting that family member, supporting that loved one, of being impacted by that, broken promises, all types of things that happen as a result of, those those abuses and those mental health challenges. So I've been encouraging pastors first to kind of begin to look at the work within, and then to kind of pay close attention to their congregations, right? Of course, we are very charismatic in our experience, but pay attention. Pay attention to who's crying. Pay attention to who's just in a daze. Pay attention who smells like marijuana. Like, people come to class smelling like marijuana. They'll come to church smelling like it too. Pay attention to people who are drunk, and not just at church service, but check out the people who are drunk at the church meeting, right? Dr. James Forbes says you have to come down off the pulpit and taste the people, right? You got to take a minute to get down and see where they are, hug them, embrace them. And if you hug them and you embrace them, you can smell what's going on in the lives of people. So I've just been encouraging pastors to not only do the internal work of being more attentive to the congregations that they're serving, but also, that external work, putting your hands, going into places where people are, not being afraid to go to their homes, even in light of COVID. Like, be safe, but go and see what's going on in the lives of people. And if shepherds smell like sheep. So if you hang around the people long enough, you'll know exactly what they need. And I think we as a church could be suffering because we have preachers who should just be preaching instead of shepherds who should be shepherding, right? There are people who are attached to the platform, but don't know how to go down in the crowd and be among the sheep. And we as the Black church has to be careful, because we're very much attracted to preachers. We're not attracted to pastors. We're not attracted to people who are going to get their hands dirty and be with us and go through the process with us as we go through. So that's just a little bit of what we are trying to shape and mold in our area. How's it with you, Brother Smith?
Dr. Thompson, I was about to put myself on mute for a minute. You were about to take me somewhere, Doc.
Don't go.
But seriously, I jokingly tell people when they ask me what I do, because going back to Dr. Thompson's point, people are attracted to pastors and that charismata, right? As we can be charismatic, and they love the hoopla, but what are you doing behind the scenes, if I heard that correctly, in shepherding, right? What we've been called to do. And earlier I stated that I shifted our entire dynamic of how we do our youth services because of that. COVID-19 had a huge impact on how we relate to our congregation and how we relate to the people, till it got to the point to where you were almost scared, as Dr. Thompson said, to get close to them or, touch them. And it got to the point to where I talked with my pastor. I said, all right, we got to come back to what we used to do, back to the basics. We got to get close to the people, like Dr. Thompson said. And we have taken an approach to, we partner with, and most of the time, Dr. Thompson, you can, let me know if I'm off keel or, agree. Most of the time we have the resources within the church anyway. So we have partnered with counselors within our church to where we've gone past that whole, what Philippians tells us, be anxious for nothing, but all things through prayer and supplication, right? And that was always the go-to. Just pray about it. Just pray about it. Just pray about it. Okay, I prayed about it. Now what? It's still there, right? And so now we have taken a strategic approach to when people come to us, especially with my young people. I've partnered with Everyday Wellness, with Ashley Young and her team, and they have a great program for young people. It's called Parents Just Don't Understand. And so when our young people, they come with their issues, I say, you know what? I want you to pray, but also I need you to call Ashley. Because often understanding that within the giftings, God has gifted people with special gifts of exhortation, wisdom and things of that nature, to where they are gifted to be that counselor. They may be able to give you more resources than myself, but as pastors and preachers, sometimes we don't want to, send people that direction because of a position or a title. Let me pray with you, or let me find the answers in the Word of God. And I wholeheartedly believe that the Word holds all the answers, but I also believe that God has positioned people in these places to give you additional help. And that's what we have now strategically turned to, that's the church, as the ER. The church is the ER. You come in and we are the emergency room. Cast all your cares upon the Lord.
Yes.
But while you're doing that, we're going to provide that help and some additional resources to get you what you need. Because you may be smelling like alcohol, you may be smelling like marijuana, but what next? How can I beat this? Who can I talk to when I walk away from the church? And that's what we have started doing. And then, my focus is really on the young people. And I really wholeheartedly talk to the parents. Again, I talk to the parents and I tell them, hey, we need to partner. We need to connect with someone that can give you additional resources when you can't reach Pastor Chavis, right? You need to be able to talk to someone else.
Yeah.
Awesome.
That's cool. That's cool, Chavis. When you said that, I think one of those fruits, Dr. Davis, when you say, what does our doctrine or belief say about mental health? I think if we took the Bible seriously, we would pay attention to the fact that Luke was a physician. The person who wrote the Gospel of Luke and Acts was a physician. He was a medical doctor, right? He knew what he was talking about, and he knew how to detail things in a way that helped us to understand the compassion that is needed, that is found in Jesus Christ. Not just his prayer life, what Paul would share with us, but also the compassion that's needed. And I think one of the things that we probably need to understand in the church is that one aspect of the fruit of the Spirit called long suffering. Our patience is very short when it comes to people who are in the process. And we have to embrace that fruit of the Spirit. They're not fruits of the Spirit. There's one fruit of the Spirit. And an aspect of that fruit is called long suffering. We have to learn how to endure with each other again, instead of just pushing it off, brushing it under the rug, and thinking that a one-time stop shop is going to fix everything. Some people you're going to have to walk with every day. Because even in the Gospels, the man was like, Jesus touched him. He said, yo, what do you see? He said, I see a man, and he looked like trees. And so Jesus had to touch him again. You know why? Because sometimes one touch won't do. And we have to go back to that whole concept around long suffering, endurance, and patience.
Amen. I felt like I was in church. I was like you, Pastor Smith. I was about to put on mute and come in here and do my little David dance and put my hands up and praise him. But this is really good conversations. And we could potentially, we can do other series on just what you guys just spoke on alone, in reference to the doctrine. What does the scripture say about mental health and health? Because, growing up in church, you hear a lot of people say, you know what, I got this, but I'm going to let go and let God. But it's important that you guys emphasize on the work that needs to be done, right? And not just letting go. Do we have faith that God is going to heal us? Yes, we got faith that God is going to heal us. But as Pastor Smith mentioned, he has placed people here to assist us with what we need to do. And I've done a lot of research. My research revolved around spirituality, religion, and how it impacts African Americans when it comes to chronic disease. So, Dr. Jones, I'm just going to tap into you for one last question. So, what does the research say about religion, specifically the Black church, and health in the Black community? So from a programmatic perspective, because I know you have a very array of programmatic background, what are some of the best practices churches can do to get more involved?
So great questions. And I'll say, and we've kind of highlighted this already, but just more specifically, most individuals who are going through mental health crisis or facing or have mental health concerns, the church is going to be the first place where they seek help. And so That's just very important to understand. When you look at those coming through the doors of the church, we just have to automatically assume that there is something going on, which we all know it, but we really have to be more intentional about reaching folks as they come into the doors. It could, and understanding that we might have only one opportunity to keep them coming back. So through the service and the interactions, ensuring that people feel welcomed when they come through those doors, that's going to give more room for them to feel comfortable enough to then be more receptive to receiving recommendations for additional support and resources. It starts even in the parking lot as they're arriving. It starts there, having a pleasant face, greeting them when they come into the parking lot, when they come into those doors. But most people, when they are going through a mental health crisis, the church is the first place that they are going to visit. The research also shows that those who are, members and engaged in a Black church, they will fare better with beating chronic disease conditions, just because of the support and the connection between their health physically and their mental health. So when it comes to recommendations for churches, just always including that message is just also gonna be very beneficial to the members of the congregation. We hold pastors in high esteem, because of the role and the responsibility that they, have to the Lord. And in most cases, we do see that is the case. But as Dr. Thompson mentioned, there are those that are preaching, but not necessarily pastoring. But even in the preaching, there should be some nuggets that we can take away that encourage the body of Christ to also care for our mental health and to not feel ashamed if we are not in a place where we are not able to just yet cast all of our cares upon the Lord, and recognizing that there is a process and when it comes to faith building and your faith walk. But the faith in action is also the part of getting help when you need help and not feeling ashamed and being encouraged to do that. From programmatic perspectives within different ministries, especially the health and wellness ministry, not missing that mental health component. It could be, for example, any initiative that focuses on healthy eating. Then we also should be talking about emotional eating and how that factors into why someone is addicted to certain types of foods and how that is negatively impacting their health. Using examples from the scripture, a lot of churches during the new year do the Daniel's fast, but some folks don't know the background and the story behind Daniel and why he fared better physically and mentally because of the foods that he ate. So more education, definitely educational opportunities, stress management, with substance abuse, it's just a result a lot of times of just stress, trauma. And so how can we do a better job, of better managing our stress? And I think just being more transparent, when we are in churches and are doing programs, leading by example by also sharing our stories, sharing our testimonies. Like Dr. Thompson said, I have no doubt that his congregation has probably heard that he's flying to DC for an appointment to see his counselor. So being more vocal about those things, we have to kind of lead by example so that we can have that as a normal part of a conversation when it comes to the Black community. Because in other communities, it's very normalized. And so we also have to do the same thing if we want our youth and our teens to be comfortable having a counselor, being comfortable to share. We also have to model that as well. I really appreciate even in Bible studies at my church. I'm a member of First Northeast Baptist. There's not just Our pastor is just not there, whoever's teaching Bible study for that evening. They are not the only ones that's going to talk. We're going to have circle group time where we're going to have questions that apply to your daily living based on the lesson. And it's a time for us to share testimonies, to talk about what we just learned and heard, and to have that dialogue from personal perspectives as to how we're dealing with different challenges. Why is it hard sometimes to stay close to God? Why is it hard sometimes on our faith walk? Why is it hard dealing with challenges with our children or at work? And what can we do to, keep our eyes stayed on him, but to also, not stress out about certain things. And so, I also appreciate that our church has a counseling arm, a counseling ministry where there's licensed staff members who are trained. And, I think that's just very important when you have leaders that are going to be working with youth, working with mental health, and understanding that mental health crisis is a very real thing. Having leaders in those capacities that can have the formal training and the experience needed to then better serve the congregation. And along those lines as well, and I'm just going to take a little bit of a shift, but I think it's definitely applicable to what we're talking about today, especially since October was Pastors Appreciation Month. I think we also have to understand that when it comes to pastoring, our pastors are also people, and so, the statistics and the research there also shows, if we don't get mental health in check, if we don't start, leading by example in that and making sure that our congregation is hearing those messages of taking care of their mental health. We have churches that have died during COVID, and they are continuing to do the same thing. And why is that? We have 42% of pastors, and this is just as of November 2021, thinking about quitting the ministry. And half of them are from mainline denominations. These are not just pop-up churches or non-denominational churches. These are organized churches that have been around for years and years and years. And now all of a sudden, there's no pastor. And we have, let me see, there's another stat, 90% of pastors pre-COVID reported working between 55 to 75 hours a week. That's pre-COVID. And we all know that during COVID, a lot of times it was maybe the pastor and 2 other staff members that kept working. So then they absorb all of that work as well. So we are in a time where, mental health is at an all-time, it's a crisis is what it's being called with the public health community. We are facing a mental health crisis. We have pastors who are leading in efforts who are suffering from burnout. And we have like half of pastors feel that they are unappreciated as well. And so we also need to recognize that, it is a tough job being a pastor, especially when you also know that most people who are seeking mental health support in a crisis, they're coming to you first. So it's even more of a reason why our pastors also need the support and counseling, and there are lots being done, lots of new initiatives, but programming, health and wellness ministries especially really need to kind of hit home with mental health incorporated into everything that's being done. And I know I said a lot.
I'm about to write you a check. I'm about to send you an offering check. Where I send it to, because you about to get my 10%.
I was like, Dr. Thompson and Pastor Smith down there shaking their heads because
I'm about to write her a check, girl. Where's your address?
She was,
we need an offering
she's an advocate.
right now.
Advocate. Making sure and letting people know that pastors are people, and that's another conversation within itself. And I think it was you and I, Dr. Jones, we started talking about that a little bit yesterday in reference to, yes, we're seeing a trend in reference to how pastors are getting burnt out. Pastors are leaving churches, right? And we don't understand, and you said it so nicely, pastors are people. And then the example you gave when the congregation's going through something, you have a member that's going through a situation, who they call it, they're going to go straight to line to the pastor. Right.
Right.
So,
Eli.
oh my God, but I mean, I would love to have a conversation about that in reference to the pastors and the mental health and of some mental support for pastors as well. What are some pastors currently doing? What are some of the trends that we're seeing? But you guys, this was an awesome conversation. This was awesome. And I appreciate all of you guys for providing us with a wealth of knowledge. So I'm just gonna give each and every one of you about 1 minute or so just closing thoughts. Like, what are your thoughts? And like moving forward, what are you can talk about your plans for your church, or you can talk about your plans for yourself. But like, what are some closing thoughts about the church and the mental health? Who wants to go first?
I'll go first. That's fine. So I will say when it comes to how the Black church can do more to address mental health, I would definitely say extending partnerships, non-traditional partnerships. I feel that Dr. Thompson, Pastor Smith, they gave wonderful examples of that. They're doing a lot to partner with local agencies, partnering with nonprofits, partnering with universities and research institutions, because there is also not a lot of research being done when it comes to mental health and the Black church. And so forging those partnerships can give room for you to have the relationships needed where there can be more research dollars dedicated to more mental health services support, and then also just more programming also. So churches, if they're not partnering with any type of organization, community-based organization or nonprofit, or someone who is actively seeking out funding for communities, that needs to happen. Being a part of these local coalitions and having representation so that you're more aware of resources and supports that are being offered in your community. I would definitely recommend that. And then also just, being in tune with also what's happening with what are these youth looking at on TikTok and social media, so that you can also be more informed of what they are facing. What are they seeing? We can't just kind of turn a blind eye to what's happening online. We also kind of have to understand that so we can be prepared to facilitate and guide our youth in the right direction based on we know firsthand what they're seeing and the music that they're listening to. We know what the lyrics are saying, so we can address that as well. But I would definitely say just becoming more involved and not. Some of the traditional practices are great historically within the church, but they have to be modified based on the times that we're living in order to better reach, just having certain encouragement messages. Maybe if they are on TikTok, maybe your church needs a TikTok and start creating some videos that's going to appeal to the youth and give them something positive to look at in their feed. It's going to come up. They're going to be on there. So why not just already have some type of content to where there is more of a positive message being pushed. So, just meeting our youth where they are. And I definitely think I do appreciate within my church that the youth, they have classes. They have their own classes during service time on most Sundays, where these issues and these more intentional one-on-one check-ins can happen in a supportive environment where they feel like they can share more with their peers. Because I'll say, even with my own daughters and her friends, sometimes my daughter might not tell me something, but I'm talking to their friends too. And I might learn something about what my daughter is doing at school from her friend by having a group conversation. And so I think that, just creating the necessary partnerships to have more support, especially when it's not available in-house, sharing in the load. It takes a village, even when it comes to mental health.
Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Jones. Pastor Smith, closing remarks?
Yep, I was definitely going to say Dr. Thompson, you summing this thing up. I'm gonna go real quick. The first thing I really, in closing remarks, it says that the church needs to continue to pray. They need to continue to pray. It starts with that. Continue to petition God to give us what we need to continue to help our congregants and the community. And also, Dr. Jones said it well, it's engagement. We need to be more engaged. And Dr. Thompson said it as well. We need to be more engaged with our people and the community, and also educate. Continue to educate ourselves and educate those that we're called to shepherd and that we're called to provide a service to, and give them that opportunity to be able to come to us, and we provide some education and outreach. So I would just go with that. Just pray, continue to be engaged, and educate and provide that support that they need. I'm gonna drop the mic, Dr. Thompson. You got it, Doc.
Amen. Thanks, Pastor Thomas Smith.
So thank you. Lastly, really quick, not all of those things, but at the end of the day, we need advocacy and we need policy engagement, right? We need to advocate for more affordable mental health services. We need to promote insurance coverages. We need to promote and support policies that address the root causes of addiction and mental health disparities and challenges. The Black church can provide a holistic approach, right? Mind, body, and soul to addressing mental health, addiction, social stigma within our community, and we can promote both emotional well-being and overall community health. Again, the impact will be immeasurable if we just engage more advocacy and policy engagement and vote for people who care about people.
Amen. You guys, I just want to personally say thank you. This was a wonderful conversation. And I want to say thank you so much for taking the time out to tell your story, to bring your expertise on this very, very, very important conversation. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And I thank God for allowing you guys to be in my life, that I was able to reach out so that you guys can spread the wealth of your gifting and your talents and bringing all of this to the community. So thanks again. So we have our second one coming up next Tuesday, where we'll be talking about mental health and the Black culture. For those that are participating in the webinar, this is recorded. I will be sending out a newsletter with the link to the recording and also resources. I will make sure to get Dr. Jones, Dr. Thompson, and Pastor Smith's contact information, any stuff that they're working on. I'll put that in a newsletter as a resource for you guys to have to do a follow-up with these two. And we want to say, go out and vote if you get to vote today. So go vote, and God bless you all. Thank you guys for attending. Bye.